Good evening all, and welcome. Tonight's stories have been selected by the use of a power token on Patreon. Thank you, Christy. If you'd like to find out how to get a power token of your very own, as well as a heap of other rewards, check out patreon.com/mortismedia. The link is in the description, and it helps support me and the channel a lot. But without further ado, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. Have you ever heard of Kachina dolls? To understand these stories better, you have to know a few things about Navajo culture. They believe that you are not to own Kachina dolls because it is said that they come to life at night. Traditionally, these dolls were made by Pueblo medicine men. When they were made, their creators would bless them and put their hair into the center of the dolls. This was before they were mass-produced by other people and other tribes. The first story takes place in the late 90s. I wasn't there for this story, but it happened to my cousin. She moved into town and found a trailer to rent for a decent price. It was already furnished by her landlord that had just moved. She had asked my cousin not to move too many things, as she would be moving her stuff out over a period of time. Inside the trailer was a fake fireplace with a mantle on top. On the mantle were a collection of Kachina dolls. My cousin was a little wary of these as they are taboo to own, but she left them in place as requested by her landlord. The first night is when things started to get weird. So my cousin gets ready for bed and lies down. In the middle of the night, she is awoken by something dropping in the living room. She gets out of bed and heads to the living room, turns on the lights as she gets there, and looks around to see what had fallen, to discover 3 of the Kachina dolls laying on the floor. She thinks nothing of it and places them back on the mantle and heads back to bed. She was only lying down for about 30 minutes before she hears the same noise. She heads to the living room to see the dolls on the floor again. A little weirded out, she places them back on the mantle and heads back to her own room. But before she gets there, she hears the noise again. Only this time the thud is followed by what sounds like tiny footsteps. She goes to the living room to find the dolls further than they were when they had dropped in the first place. Definitely weirded out, she now tries to shake it off and places them on the mantle once more and goes to bed. She was in bed for another 30 minutes when she hears them fall, and then there are a little set of taps, like feet running across the floor. She finds the little dolls on the floor by the door. She concludes that there is no way the dolls could have fallen that far on their own. She was officially freaked out at that point and decides to collect the dolls and put them in a box and places the box in her closet. All night, she could hear the sounds of little scratches coming from the box. The next morning, she asks the landlord to take the dolls and hasn't had a problem since. The second story takes place in the 70s, when my grandmother was a teenager. She decides to spend the night with her cousin on the res. They spend most of the evening swapping stories, trying to spook one another out, when her cousin gets the great idea to bring out the Ouija board. They start by asking the typical questions. Is anyone here? When did you die? And the like. They played for a few minutes without any action and put it away for a while. They pull it out around midnight to resume the game, and finally get a response. I don't know the specifics of what they initially asked, but it led to them asking, "Are you here?" The planchette moves to yes and slowly drags towards the picture in the bottom right, the face of a man behind the woman using the board. They are all convinced that the other is moving it to scare the other, and of course they swear they're not. So they decide to ask, "Where are you?" And the planchette spells out chimney. They grab their flashlight and head towards the fireplace and shine the light. About 5 or 6 feet up the chimney, they find a Kashina doll hanging there. There was no explanation for it being there, and no one could have placed it there, as they had built a fire there earlier in the evening. The ashes were still warm. They decided best to stop playing, and my grandma hasn't touched a Ouija board since. When I was 10, my mum ran a daycare of sorts out of our house. My sister became friends with this vindictive, seemingly void of anything good, girl that my mum babysat. This girl used to brag about her brothers being able to make her troll dolls walk off her dresser at night. We obviously thought that she was full of crap, because she usually was. Her brother and his friends used to go cut themselves in a graveyard that was overlooked by a cult compound at the edge of town. Anyway, one day my sister and this girl got into some kind of spat, and the girl stole one of her Barbie dolls. My sister was livid, because like most girls, she was obsessed with her Barbies. So the next time this girl comes over, she returns the doll. Only it had half of its hair cut off and replaced with horsehair. It was sewed in. That night, my sister runs into my room screaming at me that her Barbies are alive. Now, we grew up in a pretty strict religious environment where lying was met with a beating. Being that my sister was the least likely to lie out of us 3 siblings, I started to get freaked out. According to her, she woke up and for some reason couldn't take her eyes off this particular Barbie. She said it stood up, stretched out like a human would after a long sleep, and turned her head to look right at my terrified sister. My sister pulled her covers back over her head, and the Barbie ran down the stairs, and that's when she came bursting into my room all frantic. I was so sure she was telling the truth that I sat at the top of our stairs with my metal Tonka truck, ready to smash it if it came back up. We never saw the Barbie again. Every time I've asked my sister about it as an adult, she still sticks to the same story. I was very young when this happened. I don't think I'd even started going to school yet. I don't remember much about that stage of my life, but I still think about this experience to this day. It was near Christmas, and there was a doll my younger sister and I looked forward to playing with every year. It was an angel, where you'd press the button and she would sing Silent Night. The thing is though, once I was done playing with it, I had to return it downstairs. My parents eventually realized we forgot to bring it downstairs, so I was sent upstairs to retrieve it alone. As I went to my room to get it, I heard the doll sing Silent Night. The doll had a history of going off on its own, so I thought nothing of it. I went up and opened the door. My room was completely dark at the time, but when the light from the hallway came in, it shined on the pitch-black figure of a little girl who was playing with the doll. The girl immediately turned her eyes on me, and I stared back at her in shock. My vision blurred, and my ears were ringing. And the next thing I knew, I had to pick myself up from the ground. Nobody seemed to notice I hadn't come downstairs, and confused and unable to comprehend what happened, I would just go downstairs with the doll, seeing as the girl has left. I returned the doll and carried on with my day, because I had no idea what the hell had just happened. I regularly go thrift shopping in my small town in Ontario, Canada. About 3 weeks ago, I went to the Salvation Army to pick up some vintage finds. I sometimes go into the housewares and art section to see if there's anything worth picking up to resell. And that is when I saw it. I had always been interested in creepy, unsettling, and dark things, and this painting immediately caught my attention. It was as if it were begging me to take it home. I was overwhelmed by the sense of urgency. I needed this painting now for whatever reason. The more I looked at it, the more I discovered new details. It's not a particularly nice painting. It has a very unrefined feel to it. But it was not the style that drew me in. It was the subject matter. It was so odd. I ended up adding the painting to my cart and continued to shop around. The painting ended up costing me only $2, which I considered a deal, since it came in a very nice old frame. I had it in my room for a few days before I noticed strange things happening. I live alone in an apartment, and it's generally quiet and peaceful. This all changed by the 3rd day that I owned the painting. At first, harmless things were happening, and I thought nothing of them. Instances included cupboards opening, things falling, lights flickering. I just attributed the cupboards opening to me being forgetful, things falling as me not properly putting things back, or the light bulbs as needing replacing. By the 6th day, the nightmares started happening. In my nightmares, some dark figure approaches the side of my bed from my closet. While I'm stuck in some sort of sleep paralysis, not being able to do anything while it comes towards me. It gets closer until it's at the side of my bed. It looks at me while frozen, but doesn't even have eyes. I've had this recurring dream for 5 or 6 nights since I obtained the painting, all with the figure from the painting coming to visit me. After the first nightmare, I knew that these incidents had something to do with the painting. The energy coming off it was just dark, and it got darker and darker until I was so uncomfortable that I moved the painting out of my room. Here is where things get even weirder. I decided to investigate the painting further and take it out of its frame. As soon as I took it out of the frame, this smell enveloped my house. The painting never smelled prior. It was only when I removed the glass and wood frame that the stench of sulfur came over everything. It was putrid. I immediately noticed the back of the painting, and it is terrifying. After the 5th or 6th nightmare, I moved the painting to my basement storage locker at the bottom of the apartment complex. The dreams have stopped, but the cabinets opening and stuff like that still happen. Something else started too. I sometimes woke up in the middle of the night to hearing what sounds like scratches in my front door. When I go and investigate, there's nothing there. I've asked my neighbors, but they don't hear anything. In addition to the paranormal occurrence, my health has also taken a hit since I got the painting. I've been feeling unwell, run down, and depressed all the time. I tried telling people about it, but no one really believes me. The only one who has said anything that makes me feel like I'm not crazy is when my dad came over and took a look at the painting. The first words to come out of his mouth were, "Damn, that's dark." The painting itself has a very odd subject matter. This is what I see. Please let me know if you see anything different. There is a dark figure sitting in a wooden chair staring into a mirror with its hand on its head, almost as if it is in shock. In the mirror, it is not the person's reflection, rather another dark figure standing in it. It almost looks like its hands are cut off, its arms are long, and there looks to be blood on the mirror. The walls are cracked and show plaster. There are also scratch marks with the same red on the mirror as on the wall. I'm wondering if this meant the person in the chair is trying to escape. There is also a box, which kind of reminds me of a Dybbuk box, in the corner of the room. Possibly the most disturbing part is the upside-down family portrait. I have no idea what it all means. Hopefully someone can give me some advice on how to remove the spirit from disturbing my home and my dreams. The artist is unmarked. There's no date either. If anyone has seen any similar paintings or styles, I'd love to get in touch. I want my life to go back to normal. I'm sure some of you people will probably tell me to throw it out or burn it, and I would. But I have this irrational fear that whatever spirit resides in that painting will get angrier. I was in Louisiana 2 years ago. I was in an antique store and came across a case of dolls close to the floor. I looked inside and a doll literally blinked in front of me without me touching it or anything in the vicinity, fully upright, as the eyes open and close when laying down for some of these. I came back to Louisiana to visit family, and I went back 2 years later and purchased the doll. Maybe it was a mistake. This doll had very quickly began doing strange things. Full body apparitions, loud noises upstairs when no one was there, and making me itchy when I was around it. It also brings joy when it's not doing weird stuff, and it blinks its eyes in full view and isn't subtle at all. I sleep with the doll as I would rather it be closer to me where I can see it at night, rather than somewhere I can't. I believe it to be harmless. It's from the 60s and it's a little Dutch boy. Looks like he's wearing home-sewn clothes and hand-whittled clogs. Does anyone have advice on what I should do? I really don't know. But there's a bit more. I thought about getting rid of the doll. I couldn't sleep for 4 days after sharing the first experience that I had. I was always looking around behind my shoulder and was scared beyond belief. I didn't want to get rid of it on my grandma's property, so I had to keep it until I was somehow able to dispose of it. I saw a full-body apparition several times. It looked like a human, but fully flesh. It was almost like a hairless cat, dirty, and seemed a bit bloody. Like I said, this was in the human shape, so it was extremely terrifying. Once I found an opportunity, I ridded myself of it. I drove into the country and found a tree with a hole in it, covered the doll in holy oil and left. My great-grandmother just so happened to have blessed oil by the Pope. Not exactly sure which one though. After that, everything went back to normal. That antique shop seemed to have many seemingly haunted objects. Before I left to return to Georgia, I made sure to swing by the shop to say goodbye. I looked on the floor and saw a very old flat doll with a worn-away print on the top being held down by a large brass cross, and I got a shiver down my spine. This happened when I was around 15 or 16. I still remember the craziest details, but this is not one of them. Since I was a kid, my biological mother had sort of shoved religion down my throat, so over the years of not seeing her and just living with my dad, I had developed my own belief in myself and my independence. Ghosts, spirits, and energy weren't really on my mind at the time. I was always interested in horror movies and stuff like that. My dad was on a trip to Mexico. He had called me one day after I got home from school and asked me if I wanted anything, as my dad and stepmom would usually buy me a little traveler gift or something when they went on business trips. I said yes and asked him what the options were, whether it be a keychain or a poster. He said he had stopped in a shop that was sort of deserted, like it was being shut down or going out of business, and it was located in the middle of nowhere. He said that there were some old paintings, and being into art at the time, that really piqued my interest. I only remember the description of the one painting that he had described, solely because of the occurrence that had happened once it was in my possession. It had a very old, dark wooden frame, and it wasn't super smooth, but wasn't rough or beat up or anything like that. The painting itself looked like it was on white marble, and what the painting is that almost a cartoonish traditional skeleton dancing in a graveyard wearing an outfit that Shakespeare might wear. The painting overall looked really cool, but as soon as I got it, something was off, and it wasn't super noticeable. But when you look at it, it just was unsettling in the slightest. The first occurrence I had with this painting was the first week after I had owned it. It was hanging over my door, and may I add that at the top of the painting there is an extremely super thick rope that is used so I can put a nail there so that it can hang. I had gotten out of the shower after I got home from school, and I walked into my room. As soon as I walked through the door, the painting fell, and I felt the wind from the painting fall behind me, and it felt like it was a few inches away. Any other day I would have just dismissed it and thought about how crappy it would have been if the painting had hit me, but I didn't realize that there was something extraordinary going on. So I put my clothes on, got a stool, and spent about 3 minutes making sure the painting was not going to come off the nail. When I got off the stool, I gently pushed the side of the painting to watch it swing back and forth to ensure that it would stay put. I had to make sure that the only way the rope would come off the nail was if you were to push directly up and pull it off. I left and walked into my bathroom to take a leak and pick up my clothes from the floor, and when I walk in, back through the door into my room, the painting fell off and hit me in the shoulder. This had honestly freaked me the hell out on many different levels, and it doesn't even stop there. I picked up the painting from the floor and then tossed it in the closet with all my dirty clothes. And being at about 15 or 16, obviously it was just a pile on the floor. After about a month, I'd told one of my friends about what happened with the painting, and to this day something tells me that I probably shouldn't have told anyone about this, because nothing had even happened until I brought it up with him. The next morning before I had to go to school, it was extremely early, and I had woken up and couldn't get back to sleep. And it was before any of my parents woke up. I couldn't get back to sleep because I didn't realize that my instinct was picking up that there was something else in the room with me. I sat up and just sat there and stared at the closet doors. I sat there for about 5 minutes, debating on whether or not I wanted to see what had sounded like scratching coming from the inside of my closet. I threw up my blankets, pulled my feet onto the floor, but as soon as I stood up, the moving in the closet stopped. At this point, it was reacting to the sound of me, which was scary and terrifying because I realized that the painting was in there, and from what had just happened the month before. I stood there for a solid minute just staring at the door, and when my anxiety got so high, I just ran up to the door and threw it open. Nothing. Just a pile of clothes, and no, the clothes weren't a month old. I just kept the painting on the floor because I really didn't want to touch it. I just stood there looking into the closet and down to the floor when I noticed the corner of the painting. As soon as I made eye contact with it, there was an inhumane and grotesque, deep-pitched growl that emanated from the closet. And the scariest thing about all this was that I could feel the sound vibrations in the floor and in my chest, and there wasn't even anything there. I was feeling the vibrations from something I couldn't even see that was making the noise. I ran out the room and went downstairs for the remainder of the hour that I had, until I had to actually get up for school, and sat on the couch watching TV in the kitchen with all the lights on downstairs. After this happened, my mental health rapidly declined, and I was diagnosed with clinical depression, anxiety disorder, and ADD, all of which I'm sure I would have been diagnosed with regardless. It just felt like when I was home, these feelings intensified by 10. My parents didn't believe me, so I gave the painting to my dad and told him to put it in storage and that I didn't ever want to see it again. About a year later, and a quarter, I was 17. I had switched rooms and moved into my sister's old room because she had moved out. I'd put the painting up on the wall, but was only there a week until I had an experience where I woke up with my body facing the wall and couldn't move. I'd passed out and left my door open and heard something had started from the stairs and then began to walk through the hallway and into my bedroom. As soon as the steps stopped by the side of my bed, I could move, but nothing was there. My family owns a big dog and a small dog, but I know it wasn't the dogs, because when they walk on the wooden floor, you can hear the sound of nails, and it's very high-pitched. I haven't seen the painting since after that happened. I saged my entire house and hit a dip in my mental health again. It was messed up and evil. I was paranoid, and my parents thought I was just lying, since I was also dealing with the issues between me and them. Safe to say, I never want to see that painting again, for fear of what it might do. Unfortunately, I'm a Goodwill addict, and I saw this gorgeous picture that I simply had to have. It was a whole $5, and when I took a closer look, it was a black and white puzzle that someone had put into a heavy-duty frame. A big cat sprawled out into the snow, with snow falling all around him, done in black and white in a steel frame. It was very beautiful. Anyway, I get it home and hang it in my guest bedroom. My bestie comes to visit, and she is standing in the guest bedroom doorway getting ready to take a shower. I come over to the doorway, and we were there just gabbling, and something caught our eyes at the same time. The picture lifted up and away from the wall and gently fell onto the carpet while propping itself up against the wall. She looks at me and asks if I had just seen that. I reply that I did. This picture/puzzle is very heavy, 2 zigzag brackets in the back to hang on 2 corresponding wall nails. I picked the picture up and made sure everything was secure. The brackets were perfectly fine. The nails were both still in the walls with no sign of stress. My bestie stays a few days longer and leaves. While she is with me, no other events occur, and after she leaves I get this floodlight on the closest door, and there are 0 lights from the window, and I'm standing in a pitch-black bedroom with a glaring bright light on the closet door. It lasted 1 week and disappeared. It was simply too odd. This happened when I was in my sophomore year in high school. I was at my friend Nick's house with a couple of other friends, and we were all staying the night. It was just the 4 of us high schoolers there that night. That same night, there was a severe weather warning due to a storm that had the potential to create tornadoes, which it did closer to the Connecticut River Valley and parts of Massachusetts. The wind, even without a tornado, was intense, and we were just glad that this house had a good-sized yard with no tall trees to fall. It was pouring rain. There was lightning and everything. We're all up on the 2nd story of the top floor, and one of our friends was asleep and somehow managed to sleep through this. The rest of us were all awake, talking about how we weren't in danger of tornadoes, except one of us who was convinced we were all going to perish that night. Mid-conversation, there's a loud bang, and the entire house rattles. Okay, that's not supposed to happen. What could it be? We come up with some theories. Tree down, no trees. Earthquakes, no reports. Wind, well, there's no downed trees outside. And we're down to the bulkhead just slamming shut. Or something spooky. We grab a few knives and head downstairs. In the living room, we all notice for the first time how many porcelain dolls Nick's mother owns. We check every room to find nothing but those creepy dolls, but nothing that could cause a bang. There are 2 rooms left, the basement, and a closet that's barely enough to fit folded linens. We decide that if the bulkhead isn't locked, then we forgot to close it, and there'll be water in the basement, and the sound we heard was the wind knocking it shut. If the bulkhead is locked, we remembered to close it. The bulkhead was locked shut. The floor was bone dry, and the sound wasn't the bulkhead. There's 1 room left, the damn closet. What could be in a closet big enough for only Houdini himself to squeeze into? We open it up, and something falls, and we hear the sound of glass shattering. We look at the ground. It's one of the dolls. What was it doing in the closet? And why would it be propped up so easily to let it fall? We didn't care. We just went upstairs and did our best to fall asleep. It's something we all try not to think about, but everyone will once in a while be over there and hear a murmur or a grunt, and we'll never know where it's coming from. We also don't know whatever happened to the remains of that broken doll. This happened a few years ago, when I was 15 and had just started buying cassette tapes. Now, the reason why I did this isn't relevant to the story, so I'll make it quick. As many of you may know, concert tickets have gone up since not many people buy CDs, records, or cassettes anymore. Me, trying to be a world changer, I figured I could start a ripple effect and everyone else would magically start to buy them again. Yeah, right. Anyway, I'm a huge Metallica fan. and I had been looking for a Master of Puppets tape. I'd basically given up on trying to get my hands on a Kill 'Em All tape. I didn't trust eBay or most online retailers, but lucky for me there was a guy at my school who sold CDs called Dave. He was a little on the sketchy side, but at least I knew that if I got ripped off, I'd have an easier time getting my money back. I approached him one day and asked if he had a Master of Puppets tape. As soon as I asked him this, he went white as a sheet, looked extremely sick, and I said, "Dude, are you alright?" He didn't say anything, and just looked at me as if I had said a forbidden name. A few seconds go by, and he grabs the tape from his locker, practically throwing it at me, taking my $10 as he speed walks away. I stood there for a moment, still in shock by how he reacted. I looked at the box. It looked like a normal Master of Puppets tape box. You know, with the graveyard cross headstones and the hands in the dark red sky. Then came the moment of truth. The actual tape, and if it was legit. I opened the box and inspected it. Yep, it was legit. Now my only concern was if the thing actually worked, because it wouldn't have surprised me if I went home and it wouldn't play. My concern was soon replaced with dread, and honestly, I didn't know why. Something about the tape began giving me bad vibes. My stomach felt sick just holding it. My instincts kept telling me to just throw it in the trash and get one somewhere else, but I didn't. Fast forward through school, I get home, pop the tape into my cassette and press play. Nothing. I take the tape out and put it back in. Still nothing. I take the damn tape out about 6 times, and nothing happened. At this point I was annoyed, because I thought this guy had ripped me off. That would explain the behavior when he gave it to me. I gave it one final attempt, and it didn't work, so I was going to confront him the next day. I put the tape in and pressed play once more, and there was nothing. Well, that guy better not have spent that $10. And as soon as I was reaching to turn it off, a blood-curdling scream came spilling out of the tape. Unless James Hetfield had taken hormone pills to sound like a woman, I didn't think the screaming was coming from him. I mean, the sound. It sounded like she was being buried alive. Whatever the hell it was, I hoped it wasn't real. I repeatedly pressed pause, but it wouldn't stop. This went on for about 5 minutes, and in that time, a light bulb 5 feet away from me exploded. Other people may just shrug this off as a coincidence. I couldn't do that, no matter how hard I tried. After 5 minutes it stopped. However, the tape didn't. It went straight into the song Battery. Keep in mind that I've listened to the whole album numerous times, and while Battery is the first song played, there is absolutely no screaming whatsoever. I didn't know whether to be scared of the screaming or the fact that it made the light bulb explode. I grew a pair and played it again. This time there was no screaming, and it played like a normal album. How is that possible, I thought? How can it have that horrific scream 1 minute and play as if nothing happened the next? Was there something wrong with the cassette player? I didn't know. But how could a cassette player cause something like that? Giving into my stupidity, I played the tape again. This time all the lights in my house went out, surrounding me in darkness, alone with this tape. By now I had lost myself. I knew that the tape was giving me bad vibes, and by the way Dave had acted, he had to have known something was up with it. I had enough. I took that thing out and completely smashed it. After smashing it, I made sure to put it at the very bottom of the trash barrel outside, because there was no way I was keeping this thing inside. even if it was in the trash can under the kitchen sink. I couldn't sleep that night. The nightmares I had about the screaming woman kept waking me up all night. Not only that, I felt like something was watching me throughout the night. My skin crawls just thinking about it. The next day when I went to look for Dave, he wasn't there. Going through the motions at school, I felt nothing but dread. Had something happened to him? Was it because of that tape? Or was he just skipping? There was no way to tell. I got home and I felt the urge to look into the trash barrel. I slowly opened the lid, praying to see its smashed remains at the bottom. Nothing. It was gone. My heart dropped. The feeling of dread was now getting overwhelming, and I felt an anxiety attack coming on. I tried to reassure myself that maybe I had just thought I put it in there. Maybe it was inside the trash can inside. But no. I specifically remember bringing it out there. All of a sudden, I heard screaming. The woman, and it sounded like it was coming from inside. I ran inside and my legs turned to jelly. The tape I had smashed was now playing in the cassette player, not to mention that it had somehow gotten inside. There was nothing I could do but sit there, waiting for this to end, hoping to God it was just a nightmare that I would wake from at any moment. I have no idea what the hell happened to that tape to make it so evil, but I don't want to find out. The sounds of the woman's screams still haunt me. It also doesn't help, the tape keeps coming back, no matter how many times I destroy it. However, I learned a lesson from this, and I hope you did too. Be careful who you buy from. My daughter has several old porcelain dolls. When she was 9, she got a sudden interest in them. I had never bought them for her because they are often very delicate, and I didn't want her to break them. I took her to the Goodwill and she begged me for one. I let her buy it, since she takes very good care of her things, and I quickly noticed something was different in my house. I felt like I was being watched. Shortly after that, she asked for another doll at the Goodwill. Over the years, she has collected 3. I noticed she was very careful about which ones she picked. She treated the dolls like gold, and she keeps them sitting up in the corner of her bed. She tells me the dolls like me, since I'm so careful with them when I move them to make her bed. I see shadows around my house and hear soft voices. Nothing that makes me feel in danger, and I'm getting used to it. But it is, nonetheless, very freaky. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. As always, a huge thank you to my incredible patrons for their help and support. It really does mean a lot. If you'd like your name featured at the end of one of these videos, all that you need to do is sign up to Patreon. The link is in the description, and an amount as little as $1 a month can really help me out when creating new content. But of course, it is completely optional, and if you do sign up, there are some awesome perks which you can find out about if you click the link. In any case, thank you everyone so much for watching. I do apologize about my absence lately. I've had a string of bad luck, the latest being my laptop charger deciding it no longer needed to function, which, as you can imagine, is incredibly annoying. That, along with the house move, didn't make it easy to record, seeing as I had no way to power my laptop. But it arrived, and I'm glad I can get on fresh content. The problem was yesterday I arrived too late, and I didn't have an opportunity to do a recording, so it had to be a compilation. But I don't want to release any more compilations for a while. I want new, fresh content for all of you guys, as I'm sure most of you would want anyway. I've got something special planned for Halloween, so be sure to stick around. I think you guys will really enjoy what I have in store. I just hope I can finish it in time, but I think I will. In any case, I'm going to sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you